Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast. If you were tuning in on video, you might see that I have some stickers on my face, but hey, that's how the cool kids are covering up their spots nowadays, and I love it. Might as well have some fun with life, right? Speaking of fun, I think road trips are very fun. They're not just about getting from point A to point B, they're about the journey in between. Take that advice, apply it to your life. Thank me later. At the beginning or in the middle of June, really, I took the VinFast VF8, a CCS vehicle, out from Tennessee to Colorado and documented all of that. I have podcasts where I kind of updated you live at the end of each day, and that was really fun. I did a lot of planning, I did some preparation, and I made it out there no problem. I decided after staying for a month in Colorado, okay, let's leave the VinFast VF8 and take back, well, a really old Tesla Model 3 with 145,000 miles, also known as BEAK, the out-of-spec Model 3. And I took that from Colorado to Tennessee, and man, were those experiences different. And today I'm going to tell you just how different they were, also maybe how they were similar, and what I preferred from each, because there are things that I prefer from each. Let's plug in for another episode, and you can hear about all of that now. This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. So how long was this road trip from Colorado to Tennessee? It was from Fort Collins specifically to the Mississippi River, and it was 1,212 miles. So 12 miles. And it all started, I woke up kind of outside of Golden, Colorado on the foothills. My colleague Jordan was kind enough to lend me a spot on his couch, and I took the out-of-spec EV9 that we've had on loan from the Foco Kia dealership and drove that up to Fort Collins because Jordan wanted to stick around and hang out with the VinFast. So I left the VinFast with him. He's been experiencing it. And I took the EV9, which I do like, and I can talk about more in detail another time, up to Fort Collins, where Alyssa had plugged in BEAK overnight. And while it was definitely lived in, that's for sure. My friends and I, once we got it to Tennessee, actually gave it a nice scrub down. So it's a bit more, it's less covered in dog hair. Rafiki and I unpacked the EV9 and packed somehow all of my stuff that I had kept for a month of traveling through Colorado into the 145,000 miles on the odometer Tesla Model 3 from 2019, I believe. And it was a pretty good experience, I would say, overall. If you tuned in for the VinFast VF8 road trip, you could see that I did a lot of planning. I made a Google Sheets. I checked out PlugShare to check out my route. I had to stop in Wichita to get a software update because VinFast does not do over-the-air software updates yet. If you have a VinFast and you haven't taken it into the dealer to get the latest software update, would strongly recommend. But I checked out those PlugShare sites before, and I mapped my route. When you're driving Tesla, you really don't have to do it. And I was looking back through the videos from that road trip, the most recent road trip in the Tesla. And at one point I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is easy. So I didn't really do any planning, which is great because sometimes I like to plan and sometimes I just like to go. This time I was just like, let's get in to the Tesla and just let it decide. And I trusted it the whole way there until the end. I'll tell you about that, to guide me all the way back to Tennessee, and just put my faith in it in terms of how it estimates how long I need to charge, where I need to stop and charge, my estimated state of a charge upon arrival at the next destination, all of that. I was like, okay, let's see how well this does. Because while it is an old car, Tesla is able to update all the software and still have a lot of the same, all the same benefits of the newer models as well that just come with the newest software. So I didn't do any planning. And I first had thought maybe I would just go across all of Kansas, the long state of Kansas. But I said, hey, wait, why? I really enjoy driving down through Wichita and going through Oklahoma and Arkansas. I think it's a far more beautiful drive than super flat and dry Kansas. No offense. Okay. So overall, it was a really great and accurate route planner in the Tesla. And I think that is my biggest takeaway. You don't have to plan it out if you're in the Tesla. It knows where the superchargers are, it knows their speeds, and it knows your final destination and fills in the spots all the way in between. Route planning in EVs is absolutely essential. If any automaker is not thriving in that, they need to do that immediately. It makes life so much easier for the EV driver. Sometimes it did warn me to stay below a certain miles per hour, for instance, on the next stretch, so that I would make sure that it would be at a high enough state of charge upon arrival. But one thing that is also great is that the Tesla typically does the EV road trip at the out of spec style, which is you want to arrive to your next charger at a low state of charge, charge up to just what you need to get to this. It usually sent me about 150 miles, 140 miles to the next supercharger to charge up enough to do another stretch like that. And it was pretty great. Typically, it wanted me to charge up to about 80, 85, one time 75. And then one time it was like, oh my gosh, you need 95 to make it all the way to Tulsa, which I don't think we really did. But at times it would warn me, stay below 80 miles an hour, stay below 75 miles an hour to make it to the next stretch based on the calculations that it was doing. But I was always watching the state of charge estimation upon arrival and making sure that it wasn't draining down to zero too quickly. Now, this car doesn't have the full self-driving capabilities. It did have auto steer, but I quickly realized that I didn't like that at all. I just would rather prefer the cruise control and to steer for myself. And because the car basically prompts you a lot to give some input into the steering wheel. And that's great, safety measures, but I was tired of being nudged and told what to do. So I was like, okay, I'm steering anyways. Why don't I just do that myself? So in terms of that, I do strongly prefer the VinFast driver's assistance system. It is so good. So very good. It drives itself so well. It does ping you for safety things, but it wasn't as annoying as I found the Tesla to be with the auto steer option. It has obviously the Model 3 has a far better sound system than the VinFast. And the ride, though, this car is loud. It's very loud. You can hear the road noise. You can hear the cooling systems. And it's creaky and it groans and moans. And the VinFast doesn't do any of that. So I would say that the VinFast is far more deadens the sound and has a bit more of a smoother ride quality. You don't feel all of the bumps, and definitely the car is new, so it doesn't creak and moan like this old Tesla Model 3. The charging stops for the Tesla superchargers were generally places that I enjoyed being. There were some parking lots where I was like, oh, well, I don't really want to go shopping right now to Land's End or something, so I guess I'll just hang out in the shade. And there also meant that if it's in kind of a shopping mall, you really have to search for the public restrooms if there are any. So there's nowhere to just chill and hang out inside easily. But generally, I enjoyed the places and the amenities at these supercharger locations. Generally, they were also good speeds. 250 kilowatt charging is this peak that you're going to see on the Tesla supercharger network right now. Occasionally, I had to hit an 150 kilowatt charger and stay for a little bit longer, but that's okay. Generally short stops, I would say. And it was also very nice because the Tesla would ping me and say, hey, you've got 10 minutes of charging left to make it to your next stop. And I'd be like, great. I don't even have to think of how to calculate how much charge I need to get to the next stop based off the last one. So I did notice my brain did not have to work as much to plan out my route. And I do think that that is a fun part about EV travel. And I like to plan out camping trips and road trips in general for stopping and amenities. So I don't mind planning. I truly don't. And maybe it's because it's a part of my job. But the reality is we need route planners that do it for you. And it's really easy for Tesla to do that because they're vertically integrated. They own the supercharger stations. They have all of that amazing data, and they can update the drivers as they go to make them have the best time, really. So I started in Fort Collins with 92% state of charge and headed to Lyman, Colorado. It was about 146 miles from there, and it was a pretty easy drive. Not many people were on the road. Generally, I didn't ever really deal with traffic this whole trip, and I drove, 146 miles to an Arby's in Lyman, Colorado, and it was across from this Colorado gift shop as well. So I walked through, and basically with those old gift shops or general stores that are kind of quirky, I kind of treat them as a museum. You get to look at the trinkets, have a little bit of fun, and I actually got a souvenir hat, which maybe I will go get. And I'm gonna show you this hat. So if you're tuning in, just audio, just know, everyone, that I'm wearing now a green bucket hat with mountains and the word Colorado embroidered on it. And I will be wearing that for the remainder of this video because I already have stickers on my face, so might as well have some fun here. I also picked up these very funny and cute holographic cards and notebook for souvenirs for my friends. So always have a little fun on the road. Why not? But having that kind of amenity, cool. You can definitely kill some time in a cool little general store. When I came back to the car, because it's great, of course, I can walk my dog at all these stops along the way, but also I can leave dog mode on, which is great. He can stay cool in the car. But there was a Cybertruck plugged in nearby. It had this interesting holographic kind of looking wrap on it. So that was interesting to see a Cybertruck. It's kind of random to see them places, but they're technically just a car. Okay, Colby, Kansas was my next stop. I continued on 144 miles and I arrived at a 7% state of charge, and then I left. Oh, speaking of, when I was in Lyman, Colorado, I arrived at a 24% state of charge arrival. That's kind of the highest we're ever going to see on this trip. And then I left at 78% state of charge, and it is expected that I would get there about 10% at arrival. When I got to Colby, Kansas, 144 miles later, I was at 7% state of charge. I charged up until 81% before leaving. But while I was there, this was a Casey's General Store, and also a nice spot with a lot of amenities. Big grassy area. Of course, you can get snacks and hang out in the shade outside. And that's when I was sitting under a tree with my dear dog, Rafiki, and I looked over at the BEAK charging in the parking lot, and I thought, oh, I might not have to spend any time in a Walmart parking lot on this EV road trip, which is so contrary to the one with the VinFast, because Walmart, it's great. There's a lot of Electrify America stations, and all of them worked on my road trip out there at Walmart parking lots. And Walmart has air conditioning, restrooms. You can buy anything at a Walmart, basically. So it's not the worst amenity to have. It's usually in an open area, so you can walk around as well. But it was just something I realized I might not have to do that. Walmart is fine, but it's also really nice to have diversity in my stops. It's not just always some Walmart somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It was also, of course, really hot. Like I said, heat wave. And I did decide to get a bag of ice and wrap it in a towel and put it under Rafiki's seat, because there's no ventilated seats in the back of this 2019 Tesla Model 3, as a bit of a cooled seat for him. And he actually really did like it. So if it's really hot, maybe consider doing that. My next stop was 131 miles away. I left Colby, Kansas with 81% state of charge, and I arrived with 13% state of charge 131 miles later, like I said. And the Tesla was always pretty accurate in what it thought I would arrive at. But basically, it does shift along the way if you start going faster, if you start using the AC. So I would always keep an eye on that, but it never really led me astray. So in Russell, Kansas, I stopped at a Sonic, and the only time I had been to a Sonic recently was when I saw a convertible painted Barbie pink with the word Barbie on the side, parked at a Sonic, and I whipped a Yui and went back and took a photo of it because it was just so cute. But I hung out in the shade. I actually didn't get any food, but Sonic does seem like a great spot for EV amenities because you're supposed to pull up and order and eat in the car and have them rollerblade, maybe if you're lucky, your food out to you, something like that. It's a bit of a longer experience, but yeah, I didn't get any food, but it was a great place to sit and hang out. You know, that's what it's designed for. And yeah, so that was pretty good. So that was another 131 miles. I had used about 170 kilowatt hours in that first day before I finally I left that site at 85% state of charge and got to Wichita, Kansas at 9% state of charge arrival at night to my hotel. I wasn't going to charge till the next morning. Wouldn't recommend leaving your EV at such a low state of charge overnight. But when you're on a road trip, sometimes things just got to work the way that they got to work. And when I got to Wichita, easy, stayed overnight, woke up and found a supercharger and continued on my way. I will note that when I was going from Russell to Wichita, Kansas, it tried to add a stop in Salina, Kansas, for me to charge for 5 minutes to make it to Wichita. But I said, no, please no, I'm just going to drive slower. And that totally worked. Like I said, I got there at 9% state of charge, so it was low, but I didn't want to pull off and charge for 5 minutes. But sometimes it will add that in, even if it's just 5 minutes, which is so how you want to drive EVs. You just want to get enough energy as you have. So I do appreciate that about it, but also I was like, I'm not going to stop there. So you can just easily remove that charging stop. So I woke up early with a low state of charge to get to a supercharger, got there around 2%. There was definitely some drain overnight. It was at a shopping center, so I could go to a grocery store across the street, but it was early and there wasn't much going on. So I did go to the grocery store, got some deli meat for my dog, and that's basically the only thing he'll eat on road trips. And I saw some families charging their Teslas up in the morning, some moms getting their makeup done in the mirror with their kiddos hanging out before they carried on their way. It was cute. It was wholesome. You could walk around, but it was a 150 kilowatt station. So it took a while to get to the state of charge that the Tesla wanted me to get to Tulsa, because this was a bit of a long stretch. And it was like, this is the one where it was like, you need to charge up to 95%. Yeah, so I charged up to 92% and carried on 153 miles to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and got there at 4% state of charge. I will note that I was way less nervous showing up with a low state of charge or getting to a low state of charge in the Tesla than I was in the VinFast. I don't know what about it, but I have more trust in the Tesla than I do in the VinFast, although the VinFast wasn't ever super horribly inaccurate. In fact, I think we found that it was like 80% accurate with its estimations, but Tesla is also very accurate. And you're going, maybe it's because I'm jumping through the Tesla ecosystem, so it seems like, yeah, this will all work out. This was a huge charging station that I got to Tulsa about 150 miles later, and it was so hot. Again, we hung out in the shade. The shopping center makes it hard to really, like I said in the beginning, find something to do if you don't want to shop, like if it's retail shops, but it does seem like a great spot to have in a city, because you can leave your car, you can go shopping. But for road trips, it's not the best road trip option. Afterwards, funny enough, I went to a gas station to get the snacks that I wanted for the mid-morning and stuff, and always have to, and it just emphasizes how important bathrooms and snacks are to me, at least, but I don't think I'm that different from the normal EV road tripper to have at an EV charging station with that amenity. And we've talked about, okay, what are those perfect charging stations look like? What are the amenities that we want to see at EV charging stations? I think we're learning more and more how we would like them to look. And hopefully those building out the infrastructure are learning this as well. They need to get in an EV and go on a road trip, not at both Tesla and CCS road trips. Okay, by this point, I had 886 miles on the odometer when I got to Arkansas finally. So I went from Tulsa, where I left at a 76% state of charge after arriving at a 4, and made it into Arkansas 123 miles later. I had used 265 kilowatt hours by that point, and I arrived at 12% state of charge. Pretty good. Charged up to 83% by the time that I left. But while I was in this, it was an easy stop in Van Buren, Arkansas, and it was at a gas station. So again, convenient, basically just like a gas station, except you wait a little bit longer in terms of fueling up your car versus charging up. At this point, I had been tracking the efficiency, steady 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour, pardon me, which is good. The VinFast got 2.7 on the trip out there, or maybe around 2.5. So a good deal less in efficiency. And 3.4 was consistent basically every time that I checked it. I did hover around the same miles per hour basically along the way. So that was pretty consistent. Next, I carried on to Conway, Arkansas, which is near Little Rock, Arkansas, because this is where things went a little bit awry when I tried to do my own thing. And I should have just listened to the Tesla, like I said I would do the whole time. And I know that old Teslas cannot speak CCS. So we've covered this on the podcast before, but when you plug a car into a charger, an EV charger, into an EV, they communicate, and they communicate with a certain language, with a certain communication standard. And the old Teslas cannot communicate CCS. The newer ones can, so you're able to use those adapters and charge at a CCS location using your Tesla adapter and get a charge no problem. This one is so old. I had a feeling, but I wanted to go check. Should I have just called Kyle? Yeah, but sometimes a girl's just got to learn it on her own. So I went to Franklin's charging, which I stopped at on my way out. It was my first stop actually with the VinFast on the way out to Colorado. But this Tesla, like I said, was so old, it could not speak CCS. I could have charged it with a CHAdeMO charger, but it would have been slower. And I honestly was just like, let's just get to a supercharger. I'm almost home. Oh my gosh. So I knew a supercharger was near. I always knew that. And when I went to Franklin's, no one was there. I didn't get to say hi to JT, but I got the adapter out of, you text them, you get a code, you open up a locker, and you can take an adapter out based on what you need. So I did try it on the FreeWire, and I tried it on the ChargePoint charging stations that they have there. It did not work. I was getting hot and I was hungry. So I was like, let's just go to a supercharger. Once this makes it to the Out of Spec Motoring channel, you can see that then I get to the supercharger, I plug it in, I look in my passenger seat, and oh my goodness, I have stolen the adapter from Franklin's charging 15 minutes away. So I was like, oh my gosh, I was so overwhelmed. And then I just took it and put it in my car and forgot to put it back in their locker. And so that is something that maybe folks could get caught up with. I mean, luckily I wasn't on the road just driving, and I was at a nearby supercharger. So I texted Franklin's. I was like, oh my gosh, I did not mean to take this. I will be back as soon as I'm done charging. OMG, OMG. So sorry about that, but it was luckily no one was there at the site needing it while I was gone. So that's pretty good. While I was waiting at the supercharger, though, until I could leave, we found a pond nearby. Rafiki sniffed it out, and then he took a little dip, which was great. And we hung out in the shade, of course. And then finally, we went back to Franklin's. I returned the stolen equipment, and I made it back to Tennessee with about 15% state of charge. In summation, the route planning took such a weight off of my shoulders as an EV driver, and I see truly, I'd seen it before, but truly back to back with the VinFast VF8, where I put effort into the planning. I checked out all the sites on PlugShare before. I checked in at every site, that just wasn't needed. The infrastructure is there. The ecosystem is seamless. Every automaker should strive for this, even if it's not their infrastructure. Tesla, of course, has the advantage of being the vertical integration with their charging network and their EVs. Nonetheless, I think everyone should take a Tesla road trip. Not that Tesla's the epitome of everything, but they definitely do that very well. So I don't think you need a Tesla. Actually, I'm very confident you do not need to have a Tesla to have a successful EV road trip. If you watch back the VinFast one, I probably had more fun on that one. Actually, they were both really fun. I won't compare how much fun I have. I have fun all the time. But the VinFast one was fine and fun and kind of apples to oranges because I had to stop in Wichita to get that software update, but they still both only took 2 days. It was the same distance. I just technically got into Colorado maybe like 5 hours later than I got into Tennessee on my way back because I had that stop in Wichita. But it does really help, especially if you want to get at a charger at a low state of charge, if you have this route planning built in and your preferences put in like that, because it is just the way that you want to charge. You want to get there low and then you want to charge up enough to get to the next spot. So having it also do those calculations so that you know exactly how long you need to be sitting there is very helpful, or else you're kind of at your car figuring out, okay, well, if I plug it in for this long, I get this state of charge, then the estimated range from the vehicle is this, but it typically thinks that I'm going at 70, but I'm going to be driving at 85, blah, blah, blah. So it's just a bit simpler. I don't mind all the math and work. I know some of y'all do, so don't do it if you want. So it's a loud, squeaky car. It's old. It now has 146 something thousand miles on it, but it's very decent and the software is to die for. The VinFast, very comfortable, larger. I enjoyed the ride quality and the driver's assistance system a lot more. I did not mind charging at CCS stations and that trip in general. And I do just love figuring out, okay, this new VinFast on the market, what is it? But also, this is one of the oldest Teslas on the market and it's pretty darn good. All right, that is my road trip. I took a VinFast out to Colorado and I left it and took back a darn old 146,000 miles on the odometer Tesla Model 3 named BEAK. And now I have that for a little bit, so I'm driving that around as my daily driver. And it's a great looking car. It's got great wheels and I've been enjoying it. But if you have any questions about the road trip, let me know in the comments. Would love to let you know. I think it's a lucky position that I'm in to have a CCS back-to-back with a Tesla road trip, and I think everyone should try it out just to see the differences and should try out different EVs in general with different charging speeds. I know that's not easy, but at least watch our videos so you can see, because it's good to compare because not all experiences are equal. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. Hope you enjoyed this fun recount of my recent road trip, and I will see you soon. Drive safe, stay charged. See you next time.